Another year, another raging disappointment for Duval football. Woo. That's like the Bears football of Florida, if you get my drift. Good Christ almighty. Duval football. How dumb. It's not even the damn team's name, it's the county. Like, that's how stupid this is. Jacksonville fans right now. Like, Daddy, how dare you insult my team with one of the worst ownership groups in the entire freaking league that once again underperformed and goes into this draft with a top 5 pick. Like, come on, man. I'll say this, though, as a general rule. You know you're going to have a rough year when, number one, you're the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's always a good place to start, right? Number two, you remember Tony Khan is intimately involved with analytics and the running of the football operations. And for anybody that's watched AEW and its degradation over the past 5+ years, it shouldn't be a big fucking surprise. But then you start off 0-4. Your highly paid starting quarterback Trevor Lawrence misses about half the season due to injuries. Other highly paid offensive talent such as Christian Kirk and Evan Engram combined for under 750 receiving yards. Yeah, not great on the offensive side of the ball. And then you go to the defensive side of the ball. You give it the second highest total yards in the league, the highest passing yards allowed in the league, and your defense is in the bottom 5 in both sacks and interceptions. Like, it's not hard to see how this team was bad and, like, at times ragingly bad in 2024. It wasn't all horrible, though. Like, to be fair to Duval football, you know, Brian Thomas was rookie wide receiver 1. He was an absolute beast, and I'm not surprised. Like, when we look back to that draft, and all the focus was on Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze. You know, to me, it was like there's a fourth guy here. It's Brian Thomas. Like, if you go watch LSU, like, how could you not see that this guy has some real potential? And man, he played like it, right? Like, you're going to start hearing some talk about him. You know, does he eventually enter like the Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level? Because when you go based off of the rookie season, like, it was some pretty special stuff, especially considering the quarterback situation, right? Like, that's to me what makes it even more impressive. Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen combined for 18.5 sacks. Those two guys that you invested high first-round picks in the past on. You know, generating some type of consistent pressure on the outside. And then, weirdly enough, for a Jacksonville team that had a really bad year, they finished 3-3 in the AFC South. And usually you would think when you finish 500 in your division, like, you're going to be around a 500 team, give or take. It's just, yeah, like, their division stinks, and they did all right in their own division. They just really couldn't beat any damn body else. So it wasn't all bad, but there was enough that was bad, and it was still bad enough where Doug Peterson was fired. And yeah, like, with the way 2024 turned out, it needed to happen. Just, it's the way it goes. Like, it looked like a great hire in 2022, okay hire in 2023 until the very end of the season. And then 2024, like, yeah, it looked bad, right? Shit happens. So it wasn't necessarily a bad move when they hired him. It's not a bad move that they fired him. But the silliness of the saga around general manager, or now former general manager, Trent Baalke, like, well, that was something to see, right? Like, he's the one that hired Urban Meyer that was fired less than a year. He's the one that hired Doug Peterson, yet was ultimately fired. Even the fact that people are putting out reports of how some coaches don't want to work with Trent Baalke, and you have the media asking you about, you know, could Trent Baalke be impeding you in getting the right guy for the Jaguars head coaching job? You know, that should be like a pretty big warning that you got the wrong guy as general manager, and every day you don't send him packing, you're putting yourself in a bad spot. But apparently not for Shad Khan. But then you sit there in a media conference and you're asked about it while Baalke's on the call with you, and you said, like, hey, if a new coach didn't want to work with Baalke, you would fire Baalke. Like, who's running the ship here? Like, what the hell are you doing? Just, like, astoundingly dumb. I can't even, like, and the fact that Trent Baalke was allowed again by an NFL team to have so much power is just astoundingly stupid. So, of course, they do go ahead and fire Trent Baalke, and they hire Liam Cohen um, to be their next head coach. And at the time of this recording, still have not hired a general manager, which is always weird to me. Like, you can say, well, if they're hired pretty close to each other, they're on the same timeline. But fundamentally, if I'm a general manager, why would I want to be attached to a head coach that was just hired that I was not a part of that hiring process whatsoever? It's just not the way it should work. It's not ideal. It's kind of dumb process, frankly, because in a lot of respects, like the coach is supposed to report to the general manager, who reports to a team president, who reports to the owner. Like, you have these traditional hierarchies and organizational structures in place for a freaking reason. I'm sorry, I talked about Liam Cohen and I didn't even talk about the saga. Like, I already did a video about that, right? But this was wild. Like, the Buccaneers are going to make him the highest paid coordinator in the league and by a good margin. He's like, yeah, but before I sign, like, give me a little bit. And then, like, they couldn't find him, and, like, oh, what a mess, man. And then his opening press conference, Duval. Let's do that again. Duval. Like, dude, you legitimately practice this. Like, that's what makes this so bad. You could tell he had put some thought into this and he worked on this. And that's what he put out there. And I imagine at that moment, Jacksonville fans are like, oh, fuck. And it feels like here with Liam Cohen, and I was wondering personally, like, why the Bears didn't even bring him in for an interview when he had done really good work with Baker Mayfield in the Bucs offense in 2024. I kind of feel like I see why now. But, you know, you get some of these vibes with them that you say, this looks like a meathead. And not like the masculine type of meathead, more of like the dopey, dorky type of meathead, if you get my drift. Yeah. So not the red meat, potato eating, beer guzzling type of meathead, more of like the foo-foo tofu eating meathead. It's either going to go one or two ways. Like, this is going to look like a really, really stupid hire really quickly, or it's going to share some similarities with the Dan Campbell hire a few years ago, where his first press conference was interesting to say the least. And a lot of people crapped on it and said, oh my God, what did they just hire? Meanwhile, missing the forest through the trees and seeing like, this guy's a leader of men. And yeah, like, he's going to send Detroit on a different trajectory. Like, you look at Liam Cohen and to say, like, this was a guy that comes from the Sean McVay coaching tree, so that's got to mean something. You had teams interested in him, and he got a head coaching job pretty quickly. Like, is that more of a reflection of this guy knows how to play the political game in the NFL and advance his career at breakneck speed? Perhaps, right? Or it's like you look past that and you say, if teams see this but still want to hire him, like, how well must he understand and know football? You know what I mean? Like, it feels like this Liam Cohen hire is either going to really be craps, or it's really going to have the Jags smelling like roses. And you might find out this pretty quickly one way or another. Now, as we head into the off season, you've got Jacksonville sitting around $35 million in cap space or so, and they've got a chance to create more. And it doesn't mean they will, but they could. Like, Josh Reynolds, if they release him, it's $4.5 million cap savings. I'd be surprised if they didn't release him. You know, but $6 million by releasing Evan Engram, maybe they would consider it. $10.5 million by releasing Christian Kirk, certainly a possibility. You know, but I wonder, like, as ineffective as Gabe Davis was, who was a big free agent signing for them last offseason, like, do they feel the temptation? You've got cap space. Do you have to move on from Kirk or Engram, or do you try and run it back with them and hope they'll be healthy, have a healthy Trevor Lawrence? Like, you know, it's a fair question. They've got notable free agents like Brandon Scherf and Andre Sisco. You know, they have the space. If they want to retain one or both of them, they can. I wonder if they'll bother retaining Scherf. Maybe they'll prioritize retaining Sisco. Although you would say, like, do you really prioritize bringing back anybody on this defense for as crappy as that unit was in 2024? And again, it's a fair question. As you go into, like, the offseason and you go into the draft, like, I would certainly expect defense to be a big priority, and as it should be. They need a disruptor at defensive tackle. They need a disruptor on the interior really, really badly to open some things up on the edges for Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen. Um, Corner still feels like a massive need. Like they really sucked again against the pass, and some of that is like, outside of Hines Allen and Walker, they didn't get much in the way of pass rush. So you got to be able to get after the quarterback. But you got to have guys that can fucking cover too, and they don't have that right now. And you look at their defense. I think they could use like another linebacker to pair with Lloyd, and then a free safety perhaps to pair with Cisco. But on the offense, you could sit there and say like, hey, especially if you let Scherf walk, like, do you need to invest maybe a day two pick at guard, wide receiver? Brian Thomas is going to be your stud, right? It's clearly obvious. But how much faith do you put in Christian Kirk again and Gabe Davis again, or do you want to go like finding a guy that you compare um, with Brian Thomas over the next several years? Fair question, right? Um, so like for the Jags, it's a situation where if Trevor Lawrence stays healthy, which is an if, right? But let's say he does, and guys like Ingram and or Kirk come back and they're healthy and they're more productive, like you address some of the holes on this defense, and this Jags team could have a bit of a resurgence or a turnaround in 2025. Um, or we could find out that Liam Cohen's way in over his head and this is going to look like a big crap show. We'll see. We're going to find out soon enough.